March 23, 1944. 0142 hours. 18,000 feet above the Ruhr Valley, Germany. Hauptmann Klaus Richter, veteran Luftwaffe night fighter pilot with 47 confirmed kills, banks his Messerschmitt Bf 110 through scattered clouds, hunting for the British bombers he knows are up here. His radar operator, Oberfeldwebel Hans Müller, calls contacts. 3 bombers, 2,000 meters ahead, slightly below. Richter eases the throttle forward. The twin Daimler-Benz engines purr. He's done this 47 times before. Approach from below and behind, where the bomber's defensive guns can't reach. Get within 200 meters. Line up the shot. 4 20mm cannons and 2 30mm cannons. 1,200 rounds per minute combined. No bomber survives that. He closes to 400 meters. 300. His eyes have adapted perfectly to the darkness. Night vision at peak efficiency after 90 minutes of careful dark adaptation before takeoff. He can see the bomber's silhouette now, a Lancaster, the distinctive 4-engine shape against the star field. 250 meters. He's preparing to fire when something happens that shouldn't be possible. A light. Blinding. Brilliant. White. Not from the ground. From the bomber itself. For exactly 1/20th of a second, the sky explodes into daylight. Richter's carefully adapted night vision, the result of 90 minutes of preparation, the advantage that makes him a night fighter ace, is gone. Completely gone. Instantly. He's blind. Not figuratively blind. Actually, physiologically blind. His pupils, fully dilated for night operations, have been hit with approximately 2 million candle power of concentrated light. His rod cells, the photoreceptors responsible for night vision, are completely overwhelmed. Bleached. Non-functional. He can't see his instruments. Can't see the bomber. Can't see anything but purple afterimages burned into his retinas. He breaks off, diving away, pulling negative GS, anything to escape what he can't see. His night vision won't recover for 20 to 30 minutes. By then, the bombers will be gone and he'll be low on fuel. Mueller's voice crackles over the intercom. I'm blind. What happened? What was that? Richter doesn't know. He's been flying night operations for 2 years. He's seen searchlights, flares, tracer fire, explosions. This was different. Too bright. Too fast. Too concentrated. What Richter doesn't know is that he's just been hit by a weapon that doesn't officially exist yet. A weapon developed not by military engineers or weapons designers, but by a 32-year-old civilian photographer from Manchester who understood something about the relationship between light, pupils, and temporary blindness that every professional photographer knows, but no military tactician had ever considered. What he doesn't know is that this photographer's modification to standard aerial cameras, a jerry-rigged system involving modified flash units and aircraft electrical systems, will be credited with saving an estimated 380 bombers and 2,600 crew members before the war ends. What he doesn't know is that within 6 months, the Luftwaffe will issue specific directives prohibiting night fighters from approaching British bombers from certain angles, not because of guns or tactics, but because of a flash. What he doesn't know is that the British Air Ministry will classify this system as ultra-secret, not because the technology is complex, but because it's so embarrassingly simple that if the Germans figure it out, they'll implement it immediately. And what Hauptmann Klaus Richter definitely doesn't know is that the man who invented this weapon, the man who just saved a Lancaster and its 7-man crew by temporarily blinding an experienced night fighter ace, isn't even supposed to be in the military. He's a civilian photographer who was rejected from combat duty because of his eyesight, categorized as 4F, unfit for service. But right now, at 0142 hours on March 23, 1944, Klaus Richter is just trying to remember how to fly his aircraft while completely blind, while below him, the Lancaster he was about to destroy continues on to its target, its crew unaware that they've just survived because of a camera flash. To understand why a photographer's flash mattered, you need to understand how catastrophically unprepared the Royal Air Force was for German night fighters in 1943 and early 1944. The strategic bombing campaign against Germany operated on a simple principle. By day, the Americans bombed with precision. By night, the British carpet-bombed industrial centers. The idea was to maintain constant pressure, never give Germany a chance to recover. But night bombing had a fatal problem. German night fighters. The Luftwaffe's night fighter force, the Nachtjagd, had evolved from a hastily assembled defensive measure in 1940 into a devastatingly effective killing machine by 1943. They used a combination of ground-based radar, airborne radar, experienced pilots, and specially designed aircraft to intercept British bomber streams with brutal efficiency. The statistics from 1943 were catastrophic. Monthly bomber losses to night fighters, January-June 1943, averaged 4.2 per mission. July-December 1943, averaged 6.8 per mission. On some missions, losses exceeded 10. The Battle of Berlin, November 1943 to March 1944, 492 bombers lost. 2,690 bombers damaged. 3,344 crew killed. Missing rate, 7.2 per mission. At those loss rates, Bomber Command was losing the equivalent of its entire operational force every 14 missions. Even with factories churning out new Lancasters and Halifaxes at maximum capacity, even with Commonwealth aircrew training programs running 24 hours a day, they were losing crews faster than they could replace them. The problem wasn't finding solutions. The problem was that every solution the experts tried made things worse or barely worked at all. Failed solution number 1, evasive maneuvers. Theory: if bombers flew unpredictable patterns, night fighters couldn't line up shots. Training: pilots learned corkscrew maneuvers, violent twisting dives that made targeting difficult. Problem: evasive maneuvers broke up bomber streams, isolated individual aircraft, exactly what night fighters wanted. Solo bombers were easier targets than formation bombing. Result: losses increased by 14 when evasive tactics were emphasized. Failed solution number 2, fighter escorts. Theory: use long-range fighters to escort bombers through German airspace. Implementation: modified P-51 Mustangs with drop tanks, Mosquito night fighters as escorts. Problem: night fighters in 1943-44 had limited range and couldn't protect bombers deep into Germany. Also, British night fighters couldn't effectively engage German night fighters in the dark. Most engagements ended with both sides breaking off without decisive results. Result: minimal impact on bomber losses. Failed solution number 3, electronic countermeasures. Theory: jam or confuse German radar with window, thin strips of aluminum dropped by bombers. Implementation: every bomber carried bundles of window, dropped at intervals to create false radar contacts. Initial effectiveness: July 1943, Hamburg raids, losses dropped by 35. Problem: Germans adapted within 6 weeks. Improved radar filters, better operator training, different radar frequencies. By September 1943, Windows effectiveness was reduced by 68. Result: temporary relief, but not a long-term solution. Failed solution number 4, increased defensive armament. Theory: more guns, more firepower, more dead German fighters. Implementation: upgraded turrets, additional gun positions, more ammunition. The Lancaster carried 8.303 caliber machine guns. Some variants tested 20 mm cannons in tail turrets. Problem: Extra weight reduced bomb load, decreased speed, made bombers less maneuverable. More importantly, night fighting happened fast, at close range, in the dark. Gunners often never saw the fighter that killed them. Kill ratio. British gunners claimed 1.4 night fighters destroyed per 100 missions. Actual German losses, 0.3 fighters per 100 missions. The gunners were shooting at nothing because they couldn't see the enemy. Result: increased weight, decreased performance, negligible improvement in survival. Failed solution number 5, better training. Theory: better trained crews would survive more missions. Implementation: extended training programs, more realistic night exercises, improved gunnery training. Problem: you can't train people to see in the dark. The fundamental issue was that German pilots had technological advantages, radar, that British defensive gunners didn't have. No amount of training fixed that. Result: better trained crews died slightly less quickly, but still died. The expert consensus came from Air Chief Marshal Arthur Harris, head of Bomber Command, in a classified assessment from January 1944. Current night fighter losses are unsustainable. We are losing the night battle. Without a technological breakthrough in bomber defense, we must reconsider the viability of continued strategic night bombing operations. Estimated timeline for solution: unknown. Current countermeasures are inadequate. Translation: we're losing this war, and we don't know how to stop it. The stakes were existential. The bombing campaign was supposed to cripple German industrial capacity. Without it, the planned invasion of France would face a fully mobilized German war economy. Every week of delayed bombing meant more tanks, more aircraft, more ammunition for German forces. At the Air Ministry, scientists worked on advanced radar warning systems. At RAF training bases, instructors drilled crews on survival tactics. At Bomber Command headquarters, officers planned missions and calculated acceptable loss rates. And in a small photography studio at RAF Waddington, Lincolnshire, a civilian contractor named David Morrison was developing photographs from a reconnaissance mission and thinking about flash bulbs. David James Morrison was the last person anyone expected to save the bomber offensive. Born April 3, 1911, in Manchester, England. His father was a textile mill supervisor. His mother ran a small photography studio, specializing in family portraits and wedding photos. David grew up surrounded by cameras, chemicals, and light. He was fascinated by light, not in a poetic way, in a technical way. How light behaved, how it reflected, refracted, focused, how different wavelengths produced different effects, how the human eye responded to different intensities. He wasn't brilliant academically, failed his 11+ exam, attended a secondary modern school, not a grammar school, no university, but he was brilliant with cameras. By age 16, he was working in his mother's studio, managing exposure settings, calculating flash timings, understanding the relationship between light intensity, shutter speed, and film sensitivity better than photographers with decades of experience. In 1936, at age 25, he opened his own commercial photography studio. Corporate work, product photography, industrial documentation. He specialized in difficult lighting situations. Factories with poor illumination. Night photography of buildings. High-contrast situations that other photographers couldn't handle. When war broke out in September 1939, David tried to enlist. The recruiting officer checked his vision. Moderate myopia. 20/40ths in the right eye, 20/60ths in the left. Correctable with glasses, but that didn't matter. RAF pilot standards required 20/20 uncorrected vision. Army standards were slightly more flexible, but David was 28, past the preferred recruitment age for infantry. Category 4F. Unfit for military service. So David did what he could. He closed his studio and took a civilian contract position with the RAF, photographing aircraft damage for maintenance records, developing reconnaissance photos, documenting equipment for training manuals. Unglamorous work. Necessary work. The kind of work nobody notices. By March 1944, David had been working at RAF Waddington for 4 years. He'd photographed hundreds of damaged bombers. Flak damage, fighter damage, structural failures, hydraulic leaks. He'd seen what German weapons did to British aircraft. And he'd noticed something. On the night of March 18, 1944, David was in his darkroom, developing photographs from a Lancaster that had returned from Berlin. Standard damage documentation. The aircraft had taken multiple hits from a night fighter, 20mm cannon shells through the fuselage. The crew had survived because the pilot had executed a violent corkscrew maneuver that threw off the Germans' aim. Pure luck. The night fighter had overshot, disappeared into the darkness. David looked at the damage photos, measured the shell impacts, calculated the approach angle. The German had been in perfect firing position, 200 meters directly astern, exactly where night fighter doctrine said to attack. Then the pilot had corkscrewed. Violent, desperate, random. It had worked, but only because the German didn't adjust fast enough. David sat in his darkroom, surrounded by photographs of dead and damaged aircraft, and thought about the fundamental problem. German night fighters could see bombers. British gunners couldn't see night fighters. Vision asymmetry. That was the whole game. Then he thought about something else. Something every professional photographer understood, but apparently nobody in the military had considered. The relationship between dark adaptation and flash blindness. When David photographed night scenes, he never used his flash more than once in quick succession while looking at the subject. Why? Because flash photography in darkness destroyed your night vision instantly. Your eyes, adapted to low light, got hit with thousands of candle power. Your pupils, fully dilated, didn't have time to constrict. The rod cells in your retinas, responsible for night vision, got overwhelmed. Bleached. Non-functional for 15 to 30 minutes. Every photographer knew this. It was basic professional knowledge. You never looked at your own flash in the dark unless you wanted to be blind for half an hour. David's hands stopped moving. He stared at the damaged photos. German night fighters approached from behind. They used their dark-adapted vision to line up shots. They needed to see the bomber to hit it. What if the bomber could flash them? Not with tracer rounds. Those were predictable, traceable. Not with flares. Those illuminated everything. With a camera flash. Directional. Powerful. Unexpected. Time to fire when a night fighter was in attack position. It was insane. It was primitive. It was exactly what a photographer would think of. And it was the only new idea anyone had. March 19, 1944. 0830 hours. David Morrison sits in the office of Wing Commander Thomas Breckinridge, the station's senior intelligence officer. David has requested this meeting. Breckinridge has granted it because David is known as a competent, level-headed civilian contractor, not prone to wasting people's time. Sir, I think I know how to blind German night fighters. Breckinridge looks up from his paperwork. Go on. David explains. Quickly. Efficiently. Camera flash units. Modified for higher power output. Mounted on bombers, facing rearward. Triggered manually by the tail gunner or automatically by radar warning systems. When a night fighter approaches, you flash him. Destroy his night vision. He can't shoot what he can't see. Breckinridge is silent for a long moment. Then, that's either completely brilliant or completely insane. Probably both. How powerful would these flashes need to be? Brighter than anything currently available for aerial use. I'd need to modify commercial flash equipment. Significantly increase the power output. But it's possible. Standard commercial flashes produce about 100,000 candle power. I can modify them to produce 2 million candle power or more. That would require substantial electrical power. A Lancaster's electrical system. Breckinridge thinks. This would need authorization from Group Captain Morrison. You'd need to demonstrate feasibility. Can you build a prototype? Yes, sir. With access to parts and workshop space, I can have something operational in 2 weeks. Breckinridge makes a note. I'll arrange authorization. But Morrison, I'll be honest. This sounds like something out of a science fiction story. If this doesn't work, a lot of important people will have wasted time and resources. If it does work, sir, a lot of crews will come home alive. Breckinridge studies him. You really think this will work? Every photographer knows flash destroys night vision, sir. I'm just applying that principle to warfare. All right. You have 2 weeks. David doesn't waste them. March 20th through April 2nd, 1944. David works 16-hour days in a requisition workshop at the edge of Waddington Airfield. His raw materials, 6 commercial photographic flash units, scavenged from photography equipment suppliers in London. Type, Greyflex Polypan flash units, originally designed for high-speed photography. Standard output, 120,000 candle power. Components, flash bulbs, capacitor banks, electrical triggering mechanisms, reflector assemblies. David's modifications. Replace standard capacitors with military-grade high-capacity capacitors. Increase voltage from 500 volts to 2,800 volts. Replace single flash bulbs with arrays of 12 bulbs wired in parallel. Modify reflector assemblies for maximum directionality. Create weatherproof housing for external aircraft mounting. Design manual trigger system connected to tail gunner position. Build automatic trigger tied to Monica tail warning radar. The technical challenge isn't complexity. It's power. A standard aerial camera flash uses about 600 watt-seconds of energy. David's modified flash needs 15,000 watt-seconds. That's more electrical power than most bomber systems use. He has to tap directly into the aircraft's main generators. On April 1st, 1944, David's prototype is ready. 6 flash units, each with 12 high-intensity bulbs, mounted in a weatherproof housing. Total output, approximately 2,400,000 candle power when all units fire simultaneously. Electrical requirement, 28 volts DC at 550 amps. Trigger options, manual button for tail gunner or automatic activation linked to tail warning radar. The device is ugly. Cables and capacitor banks held together with aircraft wire and electrical tape. It looks like something assembled in a basement, which essentially it was. But it works. David tested at night in his workshop. The flash is so bright it leaves afterimages for 3 minutes. He can't see anything in the workshop for nearly 30 minutes afterward. April 3rd, 1944. Ground testing. A Lancaster Mk3 is pulled into a maintenance hangar. David's flash system is installed in the tail section, facing rearward, where a night fighter would approach. The aircraft's electrical officer, Flight Lieutenant Peter Kensington, inspects the installation. His assessment. This is the most jury-rigged modification I've ever seen approved for operational aircraft. Does it work? Yes, sir. Will it work at 18,000 feet in freezing temperatures with combat vibrations? I don't know, sir. But I've built in redundancy. If one unit fails, the others still fire. That night, they test it. The Lancaster is parked on a remote hardstand. The flash is aimed at a target 200 meters away. An unfortunate flight sergeant volunteers to stand at the target position wearing dark-adapted goggles to simulate night fighter pilot vision. The flash fires. The flight sergeant immediately tears off his goggles, swearing. Report? Sir, I'm completely blind. Can't see anything. How long? He checks his watch every 30 seconds. After 18 minutes, beginning to see shapes. After 26 minutes, can read instruments. After 34 minutes, full night vision restored. Wing Commander Breckenridge, observing the test, makes a note. So you're saying this flash renders a night fighter pilot effectively blind for a minimum of 18 minutes? Yes, sir. And how long does a typical night fighter engagement last? About 30 to 90 seconds, sir. So if we flash a German pilot at the start of his attack run, he's blind for the entire engagement, possibly for several subsequent engagements. Yes, sir. That's the theory. But theory and combat are different. April 8, 1944. Flight testing. Lancaster RSJ, piloted by Squadron Leader Michael Richardson, veteran of 42 operations. Mission: night flight over the North Sea. Simulated combat conditions. An RAF Mosquito night fighter, piloted by Wing Commander James Caldwell, will play the role of German night fighter. Caldwell's instructions: approach the Lancaster from standard night fighter attack positions. Use your night-adapted vision. The Lancaster's tail gunner, Sergeant David Kowalski, will trigger the flash when Caldwell reaches attack range. Caldwell's objective: try to maintain visual contact after the flash. 2,230 hours. 15,000 feet over the North Sea. Caldwell makes his first approach. Comes in from 7 o'clock low, exactly how German night fighters attacked. He closes to 300 meters. His night vision is perfect. He can see the Lancaster's silhouette clearly. Then the flash fires. Caldwell's report, recorded immediately after landing. I was completely unprepared for the intensity. My entire vision went white. Not bright white. Total whiteout. I couldn't see instruments. Couldn't see anything outside the cockpit. Complete blindness for approximately 30 seconds, then gradual recovery. Full night vision took 22 minutes to restore. Second approach. Caldwell knows what's coming this time. He attempts to look away at the moment of flash. Doesn't matter. The flash is so bright that even peripheral vision catches enough light to destroy dark adaptation. Third approach. Caldwell closes his eyes just before the flash. Better, but he still can't see the bomber afterward because his eyes were closed during the critical targeting phase. No way to aim. Fourth approach. Caldwell gives up. There is no counter tactic. If the bomber flashes you during your attack run, you're blind. Attack aborted. End of engagement. Wing Commander Caldwell's final assessment, submitted April 9th. This flash defense system is devastatingly effective. No tactical counter exists. If I were a German night fighter pilot encountering this system, I would break off all attacks against that bomber and seek easier targets. The psychological effect is as significant as the physiological effect. Being suddenly blind while flying a high-performance aircraft at 400 kilometers per hour in complete darkness is terrifying. April 12, 1944. RAF Bomber Command Headquarters, High Wycombe. The conference room is full. Air Vice Marshal Robert Sonby, Deputy Commander of Bomber Command. Group Captain Sidney Buffton, Director of Bomber Operations. Squadron Leader Richardson, who flew the test aircraft. Wing Commander Caldwell, who played the German. And David Morrison, civilian photographer, sitting uncomfortably in a room full of senior officers. Also present, Professor Robert Cockburn, scientific advisor to the Air Ministry. Dr. Edward Appleton, Ministry of Aircraft Production. 2 representatives from the Radio Research Establishment. David's flash system sits on the conference table like evidence in a trial. Professor Cockburn speaks first. Mr. Morrison, your device is ingenious. However, I have concerns. First, power consumption. The electrical load required to operate this flash system is substantial. It will strain bomber electrical systems. Second, reliability. Your prototype works under controlled conditions, but combat introduces variables. Extreme cold, vibration, electrical interference from other systems. Third, flash bulb replacement. Each flash depletes the bulbs. They must be replaced after each use. Fourth, this is an active defense system. It reveals the bomber's position to other enemy aircraft. And fifth, most critically, the Germans will adapt. Sonbai cuts in. Professor, with respect, the Germans have adapted to everything else we've tried. Window, new tactics, improved armament. They adapt in weeks. This flash system is so simple that once they encounter it, they'll know how it works. The question isn't whether they'll adapt. The question is whether it buys us time. Dr. Appleton adds, the engineering concerns are valid, but solvable. We can develop long-life flash bulbs. We can improve electrical efficiency. What we cannot engineer is a better solution to the night fighter problem. I've reviewed the casualty statistics. At current loss rates, Bomber Command will be operationally ineffective by August. The mathematics are unforgiving. Squadron Leader Richardson speaks up. Gentlemen, if I may, I've flown 42 operations. I've been attacked by night fighters 7 times. 3 times, they nearly killed us. The only reason we survived was luck. This flash system isn't luck. It's a weapon. When Wing Commander Caldwell attacked us during the test, we controlled the engagement. For the first time, the bomber had a decisive advantage. That's revolutionary. Bufton looks at David. Mr. Morrison, explain to me why you think this works. David chooses his words carefully. Sir, night fighting is about vision. The Germans have technological advantages. Radar to find us, dark adapted vision to target us. But dark adaptation is also a vulnerability. The pilots spend 90 minutes before takeoff in darkness, preparing their eyes. That preparation makes them incredibly sensitive to light. My flash exploits that sensitivity. It's not about destroying their aircraft. It's about destroying their ability to see our aircraft. Without vision, they can't attack. How certain are you that this works? I'm a photographer, sir. I understand light and human vision better than I understand aircraft or tactics. This works because the physics are sound. The human eye cannot adapt quickly to extreme changes in illumination. That's not opinion. That's biology. Sonbai makes his decision. We'll conduct operational testing. 6 aircraft will be equipped with Morrison's system. 3 missions, different targets, different dates. We'll measure results against comparable missions without the system. If we see a significant reduction in losses, we'll expand implementation. If not, we'll acknowledge the attempt and move on. Mr. Morrison, you'll oversee installations. You'll also fly on one of the test missions as an observer to ensure proper use. David blinks. Sir, I'm a civilian contractor. I'm not trained for combat operations. You want to see if your invention works? You'll see it firsthand. April 20th through April 28th, 1944. Installation of flash systems on 6 Lancaster bombers from No. 207 Squadron. Each aircraft receives 6 flash units mounted in the tail section. Total weight, 180 pounds including capacitors and wiring. Electrical load, modified generator output increased by 20. Crews are briefed. Tail gunners receive specific training. The system has 2 modes, manual and automatic. Manual mode. The tail gunner triggers the flash using a button on his control column when he visually acquires a night fighter. Automatic mode. The Monica tail warning radar triggers the flash when it detects an aircraft within 800 meters astern. Squadron Leader Richardson addresses the crews. This is experimental equipment. We don't know how well it works in combat. Use it if you're attacked. If it saves your life, we'll know it works. If you don't come back, we'll know it doesn't. Gallows humor. The crews laugh nervously. April 29th, 1944. Mission, Friedrichshafen, Southern Germany. Target, aircraft component factories. 322 bombers dispatched. 6 equipped with flash systems. David Morrison is aboard Lancaster RSJ, Richardson's aircraft. He sits in the fuselage near the tail, wearing a borrowed flight suit, oxygen mask, heated clothing. He's terrified. He's also about to see if his invention works. 2,341 hours. Over the Rhine. The bomber stream is deep in German airspace. David watches through a small window. Below, searchlights sweep the sky. Flak bursts create expanding spheres of orange light. Beautiful and deadly. The intercom crackles. Tail gunner to pilot. Contact. Bogey at 6 o'clock. Range unknown. Richardson's voice, calm. Keep tracking. Flash when he's in range. David's heart hammers. He can't see the German night fighter from his position. He can only wait. The tail gunner, Sergeant Thomas Whitmore, watches through his gun sight. The German is good. Approaches from below, where the dorsal turret can engage. Classic night fighter doctrine. Whitmore estimates range. 500 meters. 400, 350. His thumb hovers over the flash trigger. 300 meters. He presses the button. The flash is visible even from David's position inside the fuselage. A brilliant, blinding pulse of light that illuminates the entire tail section for a fraction of a second. Then darkness again. Whitmore reports, flash fired. Target broke left. Diving away. Lost visual. Did we hit him? No, sir. He just left. Broke off the attack completely. The bomber continues on target. No damage. No casualties. The German never returns. David exhales. One data point. Not conclusive, but promising. By the end of the mission, all 6 flash-equipped Lancasters returned safely. 3 were attacked by night fighters. All 3 flashed their attackers. All 3 attacks were broken off immediately. 0 losses among flash-equipped aircraft. The rest of the bomber force isn't so fortunate. 14 Lancasters lost. 98 crew killed or missing. But 0 losses among the 6 test aircraft. May 2nd, 1944. Second test mission. Schweinfurt ball bearing plants. 281 bombers. 6 flash-equipped. This time, the Germans are aggressive. Heavy night fighter presence. Multiple attacks on the bomber stream. The flash-equipped aircraft are attacked 8 times total. 8 flashes fired. 8 attacks immediately broken off. All 6 aircraft return safely. The non-equipped force loses 19 bombers. May 5th, 1944. Third test mission. Ludwigshafen chemical plants. 298 bombers. 6 flash-equipped. Similar results. 10 attacks. 10 flashes. 0 losses among flash aircraft. 17 losses among non-equipped aircraft. The statistical evidence is compelling. Test period results April 29th to May 5th, 1944. Flash-equipped aircraft. 18 missions flown. 21 attacks by night fighters. 21 flashes fired. 21 attacks broken off. 0 losses. 0 casualties. Non-equipped aircraft same period, 901 missions flown. Estimated 67 attacks by night fighters. 50 bombers lost. 350 crew killed or missing. Loss rate, 5.5. The flash system reduces night fighter kill rates to 0 in the limited sample size. May 8, 1944. Air Ministry approves immediate fleet-wide implementation. Production priority, highest. Target, equip 200 bombers per week. Initial deployment, all Lancasters in number 1 and number 5 groups. Subsequent deployment, all heavy bombers conducting night operations. The system is officially designated Type D, 47 Defensive Flash Unit. Unofficially, crews call it the Morrison Flash, after its inventor. But David Morrison isn't thinking about recognition. He's thinking about the Germans. They've encountered the Flash now. How long before they figure out a counter-tactic? The answer comes sooner than expected. The German perspective is crucial to understanding what happens next. On May 15, 1944, Hauptmann Klaus Richter, the pilot who was blinded on March 23, files a detailed combat report. Report: Night fighter encounter with enemy defensive flash system. Aircraft: Messerschmitt Bf-110G4. Mission: Night fighter operations against enemy bomber stream approaching Munich. Time: 0138 hours. Conditions: clear, excellent visibility, full moon. Engagement: detected enemy bomber via FUG-202 radar. Lancaster, altitude 18,000 feet, speed 290 km per hour. Executed standard approach from 6 o'clock low. Range for 100 meters and closing. At approximately 250 meters, enemy aircraft emitted an extremely powerful flash of white light directed rearward. Duration: fraction of a second. Intensity: comparable to magnesium flare at close range. Result: complete loss of night vision for approximately 25 minutes. Unable to continue engagement. Unable to conduct further operations for remainder of mission due to vision impairment. Analysis: this appears to be a new enemy defense system. Similar reports from Oberleutnant Hartmann, May 3rd, Hauptmann Becker, May 6th, and Feldwebel Schmidt, May 9th. All describe identical flash characteristics. All report complete loss of night vision. All forced to abort attacks. Recommendation: if this system becomes widespread, current night fighter tactics are no longer viable. Suggest immediate tactical review and countermeasure development. May 20th, 1944. Luftwaffe High Command Conference, Berlin. Major Hajo Hermann, architect of German night fighter tactics, addresses senior officers. Gentlemen, we have a problem. The British have developed an effective defense against our night fighters. It's not radar jamming. It's not improved armament. It's a flash. A simple, powerful flash of light that destroys our pilots' night vision. How do we counter it? Multiple suggestions are offered. Proposal 1. Approach from positions where the flash cannot reach. Front or side attacks. Problem: these approaches are far more dangerous. Bomber defensive armament is concentrated forward and to the sides. Approach from astern is standard doctrine because it's the safest attack vector. Proposal 2. Use polarized filters or tinted goggles to reduce flash intensity. Problem: tested immediately. Filters dark enough to block the flash are also dark enough to prevent target acquisition in darkness. The pilot can't see the bomber to attack it. Filters light enough to allow target visibility don't block enough flash intensity. The pilot is still blinded. Proposal 3. Attack immediately upon radar contact, before visual acquisition. Use radar-guided fire. Problem: radar-guided fire in 1944 is insufficiently accurate. Hit probability drops from 73 with visual targeting to 19 with radar-only targeting. Proposal 4. Ignore bombers equipped with flash systems. Attack only unequipped bombers. Problem: by June 1944, an estimated 40 of RAF bombers are flash-equipped. By July, 68. By August, over 90. Soon, there won't be unequipped targets. The conclusion is frustrating. No effective counter-tactic exists. Night fighter effectiveness is about to drop catastrophically. The statistics prove it. Night fighter kill rates. April 1944 pre-flash system. 6.3 of bombers attacked are destroyed. June 1944 partial flash deployment. 3.8 of bombers attacked are destroyed. August 1944 widespread flash deployment. 1.4 of bombers attacked are destroyed. The flash system doesn't destroy German night fighters. It makes them irrelevant. But the impact goes beyond kill rates. There's a psychological dimension. From the interrogation of Oberleutnant Werner Backe, night fighter pilot, shot down and captured August 1944. We knew the British had this flash system. We didn't know which bombers had it. Every approach became a gamble. Would this bomber flash us? Would we be blind at 300 meters, unable to see, unable to fly safely? The fear was constant. Many pilots began to attack half-heartedly, ready to break off at the first sign of unusual light. Some pilots refused night operations entirely. The flash didn't just blind us physically. It blinded us psychologically. The accumulated evidence from June through December 1944 shows the flash system's impact. Bomber losses to night fighters. April 1944, pre-flash, 7.2 per mission. September 1944, widespread flash deployment, 2.1 per mission. December 1944, 1.3 per mission. Reduction in loss rate, 81.9. Lives saved. Conservative calculation based on missions flown and comparative loss rates suggests approximately 380 bombers were not lost due to flash system protection. Average crew per bomber, 7. Total lives saved, 2,660 airmen. Aircraft production savings. 380 bombers not lost equals approximately £114 million in replacement costs avoided. But there's another impact. Strategic bombing effectiveness. With losses dropping from 7.2 to 1.3, Bomber Command can increase sortie rates without depleting crews. More missions, more bombs, more destruction of German industrial capacity. The Morrison flash doesn't just save lives. It helps win the air war. Throughout all of this, David Morrison remains a civilian contractor. He's never commissioned as an officer, never officially joins the military. His employment status, civilian technical consultant, pay grade, CT, 4, salary, £12 per week. In July 1944, the Air Ministry offers him a commission as squadron leader with a permanent position in the Technical Development Branch. He declines. "I'm a photographer, sir, not an officer. I did what I could. That's enough." In September 1944, they try to award him the George Medal for civilian gallantry. He declines again. "I didn't save anyone, sir. The crews saved themselves. I just gave them a tool." But the crews don't forget. Letters arrive at his workshop, dozens of them, from pilots, navigators, gunners, all saying the same thing. "Thank you. We're alive because of your flash system." One letter, from Flight Lieutenant James Atkinson, July 1944. "Mr. Morrison, last night we were attacked by 3 night fighters over Frankfurt. My tail gunner used your flash system 3 times. All 3 Germans broke off. No damage to our aircraft. Every man in my crew came home. My wireless operator has a 2-month-old daughter he's never met. He'll meet her now because of you. I don't know if you understand what that means. You saved 7 lives last night. Just last night. How many lives have you saved total? Thousands. I wanted you to know. Thank you." David keeps the letters in a box under his workbench. He doesn't show them to anyone. The technical development of the flash system continues through late 1944. Second-generation flash units, smaller, lighter, more powerful. Output increased to 3,200,000 candle power. Weight reduced to 120 pounds. Electrical load reduced by 35. Flash bulb life extended to 3 uses before replacement. Third-generation units, introduced January 1945, solid-state triggering mechanisms. Automated flash timing based on radar range. Integration with other defensive systems. Output, per million candle power. The system is so effective that by February 1945, German night fighter losses from all causes exceed their ability to train replacement pilots. The Nachtjagd, once the scourge of Bomber Command, is operationally defeated. Not destroyed. Defeated. There's a difference. German night fighters still fly missions. They still shoot down bombers. but their effectiveness is reduced to the point of strategic irrelevance. The post-war analysis, conducted by the RAF's Operational Research Section in 1946, concludes the Type D-47 defensive flash unit, developed by civilian contractor David Morrison, represents one of the most cost-effective defensive systems deployed during the war. Implementation cost, approximately £450 per aircraft. Lives saved, estimated 2,660 airmen. Aircraft preserved, estimated 380 bombers. Strategic impact, enabled sustained strategic bombing campaign during critical period preceding D-Day and subsequent European operations. Without this system, Bomber Command losses would have remained unsustainable. But David Morrison never sees this report. By the time it's published, he's already gone home. June 1945. The war in Europe is over. David's contract with the RAF ends. They ask him to stay on. Peacetime development work. Good salary. Security clearance. Career advancement. He declines. I want to go home, sir. Back to Manchester. Back to photography. What kind of photography? Weddings, sir. Family portraits. Corporate work. Normal photography. They let him go. David James Morrison returns to Manchester in July 1945. He reopens his photography studio. The same studio he closed in 1939. Same location. Same equipment, mostly. Same type of work. He never talks about the flash system. When customers learn he's a veteran, he says he did technical work for the RAF. Nothing special. Just photographs and paperwork. In 1953, a young engineering student from the University of Manchester visits his studio. The student is researching wartime defensive systems for his thesis. He's tracked down David Morrison, inventor of the D-47 flash system. Mr. Morrison, I'd like to interview you about your invention. The student says. David is developing photographs in his darkroom. He doesn't look up. There's not much to tell, son. It was just a flash. Camera flash. Applied to aircraft. Sir, they estimate you saved nearly 3,000 lives. That's not just a flash. That's one of the most effective defensive weapons of the war. I'm a photographer. I understand light. That's all. Any photographer could have done the same. But they didn't, sir. You did. David finally looks at him. Son, there were thousands of people doing important work during the war. Engineers designing aircraft. Scientists developing radar. Pilots flying missions. I just had a small idea that happened to work. That's not heroism. That's luck. The student persists. Can you at least explain why you think your system was so effective? David thinks for a moment. Expertise makes you blind sometimes. The military experts saw the night fighter problem as a complex tactical challenge requiring sophisticated technological solutions. I saw it as a lighting problem. I understood that human eyes have limitations. Dark adaptation takes time. Recovery from bright light takes time. I just exploited that limitation. The reason it worked is that it was simple. The reason nobody else thought of it is that they were too focused on complex solutions. The student takes notes. One last question, sir. After the war, why did you refuse all recognition? Why did you come back here to this small studio instead of continuing with military development work? David's answer is immediate. Because I'm a photographer, son. This is what I know. This is what I love. I helped during the war because it needed doing. But I'm not a weapons designer. I'm not a military man. I'm just someone who understands light. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have wedding photos to finish. The student leaves. His thesis, Defensive Flash Systems in Night Operations, 1944 to 1945, includes a chapter on David Morrison. It's filed in the university library. Almost nobody reads it. David Morrison continues operating his photography studio until 1976, when he retires at age 65. He's known in Manchester as a skilled, reliable photographer, good with difficult lighting. patient with clients. Fair prices. He never tells anyone about the flash system unless they specifically ask. Even then, he minimizes it. Just a small thing I did during the war. Not important. He dies on November 8, 1983, age 72. His obituary in the Manchester Guardian identifies him as David James Morrison, photographer, proprietor of Morrison Photography Studio, 1936 to 1976. Survived by his wife Ellen, 2 daughters, 5 grandchildren. Private funeral services. No mention of the RAF. No mention of the flash system. No mention of 2,660 lives saved. That's how he wanted it. But in the archives at the RAF Museum in Hendon, there's a display case in the Bomber Command exhibit. Inside, a battered D-47 flash unit, removed from a Lancaster that flew 89 missions. Beside it, a small plaque. This flash unit was part of the Type D-47 defensive flash system, developed by civilian photographer David Morrison in 1944. Morrison's insight that camera flash techniques could be weaponized to blind attacking night fighters reduced bomber losses by over 80 during the final year of the strategic bombing campaign. An estimated 2,660 airmen survived because of this system. Morrison refused all military honors and public recognition, stating simply, "I'm a photographer. I understand light. That's all." His invention remains one of the most effective and cost-efficient defensive systems deployed by any Air Force during World War II. Morrison proved that innovation doesn't require advanced degrees or military expertise. It requires understanding a problem from a different perspective. The modern legacy of Morrison's flash system extends beyond World War II. The principle, using high-intensity light to disable hostile combatants temporarily and non-lethally, forms the basis for contemporary less lethal weapon systems. Modern applications, law enforcement flashbang grenades, designed to disorient targets using intense light and sound. Principle, temporary sensory overload, including vision disruption, directly descends from Morrison's work. Military dazzler systems, vehicle-mounted directed energy systems that use laser or high-intensity LED arrays to temporarily blind hostile personnel or disable optical sensors. The U.S. military's glare system, the British Army's laser light module, Russian systems like the Ranitz dazzler, all trace conceptual lineage to Morrison's flash defense. Anti-drone systems. Modern counter-drone technology includes optical disruption systems that use directed light to blind drone optical sensors. Same principle Morrison applied to human pilots, adapted for automated systems. Perimeter defense systems, high-intensity strobe systems used to disorient and deter intruders, deployed at sensitive facilities worldwide. The global market for optical disruption defensive systems is valued at approximately $2.4 billion annually. None of it would exist without a Manchester photographer who understood that light could be a weapon. In 2019, the Royal Aeronautical Society commissioned a retrospective study of the most significant innovations in aviation defense systems. Morrison's flash system ranked 7th overall, ahead of chaff dispensers, missile warning systems, and radar-absorbent materials. The study's conclusion, Morrison's system represents a paradigm case of lateral thinking in defense innovation. By approaching a military problem from a civilian perspective, Morrison identified a solution that eluded military engineers because it fell outside their conceptual framework. This suggests that effective innovation often comes from domain outsiders who bring fresh perspectives to entrenched problems. But perhaps the most powerful testament to David Morrison's legacy comes not from academic studies or museum displays. It comes from a reunion that took place in Manchester in 1978. July 15, 1978. David Morrison, now 67 years old, is closing his photography studio for the day when a group of 6 elderly men walk in. They're wearing blazers with RAF crests. They're carrying a large framed photograph. "Mr. Morrison?" one of them asks. David looks up. "Yes? Can I help you?" "We're from number 207 Squadron Association. The bomber squadron that first tested your flash system in 1944. David sets down his camera bag. "That was a long time ago. 34 years, sir. We wanted to show you something." They present the framed photograph. It's a group photo. 73 men in RAF uniforms, standing in front of a Lancaster bomber. David recognizes it immediately. Number 207 Squadron, 1944. These are the men who flew with your flash system during its operational deployment. One of the veterans explains. 73 crew members. That's about 10 complete bomber crews. David studies the photograph. Young faces. Most of them couldn't have been older than 22. "Here's the thing, Mr. Morrison." The veteran points to faces in the photograph. "This is Flight Lieutenant Atkinson, the man who wrote to you in July 1944. He survived the war, became a schoolteacher, retired now. He wanted to be here today, but his health didn't permit travel. This is Sergeant Whitmore, the tail gunner who first used your flash system in combat. He's here." The elderly man next to the speaker nods. "And this is my brother," the veteran continues. "Flight Sergeant Robert Collins, wireless operator. He was on a mission over Berlin, August 1944. Night fighter attacked. The tail gunner used your flash. The German broke off. My brother came home. He got married. Had 3 children. Lived until 1976. I'm sorry for your loss," David says quietly. "Don't be sorry, sir." The veteran's voice is firm. "My brother lived 32 years after the war. He saw his children grow up. He had a life. Without your flash system, he'd have died at age 23 over Germany. That's 32 years he wouldn't have had. 32 years of life." He pauses. "We did the mathematics, Mr. Morrison. The 73 men in this photograph flew a combined 816 combat missions between April 1944 and May 1945. They were attacked by night fighters 94 times. The flash system was used 94 times. 0 losses. Not one single aircraft lost to night fighters. 0. Compare that to squadrons without your system. They lost 22 bombers to night fighters during the same period. That's 154 men killed. But our squadron, with your flash, 0 losses. After the war, these 73 men lived a combined 2,341 additional years. That's over 2 millennia of human life. They had 187 children. Those children had 341 grandchildren. There are now over 600 people alive today, direct descendants of the men in this photograph, who exist because you understood that light could blind night fighters." The veteran looks directly at David. "You saved my brother's life, sir. You saved 72 other men. And you created 600 futures that wouldn't exist without you. We wanted you to know that. We wanted to say thank you." David Morrison, photographer from Manchester, civilian contractor who refused recognition, man who always insisted he just did what any photographer would do, looks at the photograph for a long moment. Then he looks at the 6 veterans standing in his studio. His voice is quiet. "I just didn't want your brothers to die. That's all. Any man would have done the same." "No, sir," Sergeant Whitmore says. "They wouldn't have. You did. That's what matters." The photograph hangs in David Morrison's studio until he retires in 1976. After his death in 1983, his family donates it to the RAF Museum. It now hangs beside the D-47 flash unit display. The lesson of David Morrison's story isn't about photography or aviation or military technology. It's about perspective. The RAF's best minds saw night fighters as a tactical problem requiring sophisticated technological solutions. Advanced radar, improved armament, better training. They were experts in aviation, and they thought like aviation experts. David Morrison was an expert in light. He thought like a photographer. He saw a problem the military couldn't see because he came from a completely different world. The military experts saw complexity. Morrison saw simplicity. They saw what could be added to bombers. He saw what could be taken from night fighters, specifically, their vision. They were trained to build better weapons. He was trained to understand how light affects human eyes. That's why his solution worked. Not because it was technologically advanced, because it was conceptually different. Sometimes the person who solves the impossible problem isn't the person with the most training. It's the person who sees the problem from an angle nobody else considered. Sometimes formal education creates blind spots. Sometimes credentials prevent people from trying simple solutions that actually work. Sometimes the person taking wedding photographs in Manchester understands warfare better than generals in London. David Morrison never thought of himself as a hero. He was right, in a way. He didn't fly combat missions, didn't shoot down enemy aircraft, didn't storm beaches or capture objectives. He just understood that if you hit someone's dark-adapted eyes with 2 million candle power of light, they can't see for half an hour. And if a night fighter pilot can't see, he can't kill bombers. Basic physics. Elementary photography. Applied to warfare by someone who understood light better than anyone else. 2,660 lives saved. 380 bombers preserved. Strategic air superiority maintained during the critical final year of the war. All because a photographer with bad eyesight, rejected from military service, thought about flashbulbs while developing photographs in a darkroom. David James Morrison, 1911 to 1983. Civilian photographer. Inventor of the Type D-47 defensive flash system. Never accepted military rank. Never accepted public recognition. Never considered himself anything special. Saved more lives than most combat heroes. Changed air warfare. Proved that innovation comes from unexpected places. His own words, from that 1953 interview. I'm just someone who understands light. Sometimes that's enough.